Welcome back to another episode of Wild Wisconsin Off the Record. I'm your host, DNR's digital media coordinator, Katie Grant. If you're a hunter in Wisconsin, you've probably heard about a little something called CWD. Now, you may be having any number of reactions to that phrase, and you may have any number of ideas about what CWD actually is, or even opinions on how the DNR, as stewards of Wisconsin's natural resources, should be managing it. But in our talks with the public, one thing is extremely clear. There is a lot of confusion over what CWD is, why we should be concerned, and how you can help. Today we are here to talk about just that. A bit later in the episode, I sat down with a couple who last year wanted to get involved, so they volunteered with our Adopt a Kiosk and Adopt a Dumpster programs. But before we get to that, I sat down with Mandy Camps, a DNR wildlife biologist who specializes in CWD. Mandy helps us break down the science and gives us the basics of what CWD really is.
All right, so CWD, or chronic wasting disease, belongs to a group of diseases known as transmissible spongiform encephalopathy.
All right, let's stop right there.
Big words.
What does that even mean?
So what that means, it's a prion disease, and it causes degeneration in the brain, more of like a disorder that's characterized by these tiny holes that develop in the brain and start degrading that tissue.
Okay. So you said another word in there, prion. What is a prion?
Mm-hmm. So a prion, it's a protein, but you think about it, it's malformed. It's in a different shape than what's normal.
Okay.
So proteins are normally found in the body, but a prion protein, which causes CWD, the disease CWD, that's more abnormal. And so once an animal becomes in contact with that prion protein, then after some time, it starts degrading that tissue. And when that prion protein comes in contact with other proteins in the brain, it causes those proteins to become malformed in a different shape. And so that's where you kind of get that term chronic wasting. So it takes some time to develop.
So we have these prions, which are the proteins that are kind of proteins gone bad, folded wrong.
Sure.
Something's wrong with them, right? And they are coming in contact with other proteins and making them also go bad, if you will.
Yes.
And that kind of makes holes in the brain tissue, right?
Yep.
And that is what causes all these problems.
Yeah. So you think about all the holes that are forming in the brain. So it'll affect the brain function, the nervous system function. So once that starts happening, then you can start to see that an animal has a disease. But yes, that's what essentially causes it.
Okay.
Well, that's what's known, at least I should say. It's the most widely accepted information that it is the prion that causes CWD.
So these diseases are things that we're still kind of trying to wrap our heads around.
Absolutely.
Okay. These misfolded proteins or these abnormal proteins that have gone bad, how does a deer get them?
Sure. So when you have an infected animal, so a deer that has CWD, that those prion proteins can actually be shed in like saliva, in urine, in feces, things like that.
Okay.
And when it's shed or released from that infected animal, it's in the environment.
Okay.
It's on the ground. It's on the leaves. And so when another animal, who's a deer, who's uninfected, comes in contact with that, they can then, if they eat a leaf, for example, they could come in contact and ingest that prion protein, and that's how they could pick up the first one. Or like licking the ground, if they take in soil, direct animal contact, nose to nose, that can spread it as well between infected and uninfected deer.
Okay. We mentioned deer. Do any other animals get this?
With CWD, it is specific to deer species. So we're talking, at least in our state, white-tailed deer. An elk could be susceptible to it, but essentially CWD is a disease of deer, elk, and moose.
Okay.
So any of those species. But as we said before, CWD is a transmissible spongiform encephalopathy, or a TSE for short. Let's go with that.
Thanks for saying that one for me so that I didn't have to say it. Yep.
And the TSE it's within a family of other TSEs. So we think of like mad cow disease that can affect cattle. Another disease, Creutzfeldt-Jakob, affects humans. So it's in a group of diseases that can affect other species, but CWD specifically affects deer species.
Okay, so it's similar to mad cow in a way, but it's specific just to deer, elk, moose.
Correct. And there hasn't been any confirmed research or studies out there that has shown that it is transmissible to people, but there is definitely a concern. So other organizations like the World Health Organization and the Centers for Disease Control and even our state recommend to not consume meat from infected deer just on the chance. We don't know yet. There isn't enough research out there if it is transmissible to people, but there is potentially that risk.
Okay. Is CWD always fatal to deer?
It is a fatal disease, and it's a disease that takes some time to progress. So when a deer becomes infected, it'll be about maybe 18 months, 2 years until you actually see that the animal is infected and see those clinical signs, those symptoms. Because it takes so much time. What happens is that when a deer becomes infected, those prion proteins will start to multiply, and it actually takes time. So you think about your normal brain tissue, it'll take some time for those prion proteins to accumulate, those holes to form, and then once you reach the point where there's enough, then you'll start seeing those clinical signs, usually within the last couple months or few months of life.
Okay.
So typically people who harvest a deer or maybe even just have one tested for another reason, if it was hit by a car or whatever reason it might be, will say, oh, it didn't look sick, but it may have just been to the point where that disease just wasn't far enough along to actually have the deer show those clinical signs.
Within Wisconsin, I know we have some hot zones where like it's really highly concentrated and some spots where maybe it isn't as concentrated or maybe hasn't even been detected. What does it look like on the state scale? How big of an issue is it?
Like you said, we definitely have some hot areas down in the southern part of the state, a couple areas there where it was first detected and it's still being detected now. But so far, to date, we have 56 of our 72 counties that are considered CWD affected.
Okay.
So that could be for a variety of reasons.
Right.
So that could be a county with a wild deer that tested positive, a captive deer from a deer farm that tested positive, or any counties that are within 10 miles of a wild or captive deer that tested positive.
Okay. As a hunter, what can I do to help?
I'd say the first one, definitely get your deer tested. We have a number of sampling options and locations statewide. Another important part is, after you harvest your deer and you process it, then you have the leftovers. And then what do you do with the leftover part of the carcass? And it's really thinking about some of those more proper carcass disposal options. If there's a chance that a deer tested positive, it is best to get that part of the carcass properly disposed of and not left on the landscape. As we mentioned earlier, there's a possibility of those prion proteins getting into the soil, into the vegetation, and being out there or a way that it's exposed to other uninfected deer that could come up to it and become infected. So definitely proper carcass disposal. And lastly, it's kind of a mixture of things. So we have a document that it's focusing on different ways to prevent the spread. So we have this available on our website. It includes things about, the risks or not baiting and feeding. As we mentioned earlier, with the transmission of CWD, it can be in close animal contact. So if you have more bait or a bait pile out on the landscape, there's a chance that multiple deer will be coming in contact with each other, and that could be a way to spread the disease. And other things just about, other proper processing out in the field, using certain urine-based scents, things like that. So definitely referring back to that document to see what else you can do to help prevent the spread.
Okay. And if I'm not a hunter, what can I do to help this?
Yeah, any non-hunters can help out as well. They can help spread information about CWD. They can help out even with some of our other programs like the Adopt a Kiosk if they want to, or Adopt a Dumpster.
As Mandy mentioned, submitting your deer for testing and properly disposing of your carcasses are two of the best ways hunters can help limit the spread of CWD. And both hunters and non-hunters alike can help make that a little bit easier by participating in our Adopt programs. Now, two amazing Wisconsinites who volunteered for both of our Adopt programs are Mitch and Elizabeth Baker. The couple live in Laval, Wisconsin, along the Baraboo River in Sauk County.
I'm Elizabeth Baker. I'm a podiatrist that works at Reedsburg Area Medical Center. I'm also a new mom. We just had a baby 2 weeks ago, so we're falling into that role. I think gracefully. It's definitely a big learning curve.
I'm Mitch Baker. Married to Elizabeth Baker. I'm a carpenter, I work for myself, and I'm a bow hunter, I guess I would describe, and conservationist, and just really interested in being part of anything that has to do with conservation. So
Fantastic.
that's why we're here.
Yeah. So part of why we brought you guys on is because you participated in some of our programming last year. So last year was the first year of the Adopt a Kiosk and Adopt a Dumpster programs. And you guys helped us out with that. Can you tell us a little bit about how you heard that we were putting this program together?
You know, we've always participated in dropping our deer heads off at kiosks, and the kiosks have existed for a while, but we heard through a speaker at one of our conservation meetings that you can adopt a dumpster, adopt a kiosk, and that was something that was right up our alley. We had already been asking our regional or local biologist about if they needed another place for a kiosk, and if so, we had a place in mind. So it really lined up pretty easily for us once we heard that the department was asking for help in that area. And then, I was out of town, and Liz called me and said, I talked to Eric Canania, the wildlife biologist, and we're going to adopt a kiosk. I said, great.
Yeah, I started bow hunting when we moved back to Wisconsin in 2016. We bought this home here, and it had some acreage, and come to realize it was beautiful habitat for white-tailed deer and a lot of other species. So just through appreciating the land and learning more about it, we learned that we're in this area that's also, unfortunately, high CWD prevalence. Selfishly, looking at kind of how many deer we get per year, about 4 or 5 deer and about 50 pounds of meat per deer. It's quite a big grocery bill for us.
Right.
So selfishly, I definitely wanted to stop the spread because the CDC and the World Health Organization recommend that you don't eat venison that tests positive. So for me, being, I'm turning 33 tomorrow, so I've got quite a few years of eating venison left, plus having a new little one here. Plan on feeding her venison, and I certainly don't want to become case 0 or case 1. On the other side of it, we have this valuable resource of white-tailed deer that's, the wild herd, and there's really not a voice in the government to advocate for them. Sportsmen and women are the ones that have to speak up. Mm-hmm. So it became very apparent when we would have conversations with other hunters and landowners that just didn't seem to have the urgency about CWD that I think that we both felt to do something more than just hunt deer and get them tested. So first thing we did was reach out to our local deer biologist, who was Eric Canania, and he was excellent in helping facilitate getting a new kiosk really close to us so we could adopt at a higher level, because there's 3 levels of adoption. So we wanted to be able to actually help the DNR more rather than just, because the level 1 allows you to just drive by and let the DNR know if there's heads in the kiosk, but level 2, we actually collect the heads, and the data sheets bring them to someone who harvests the lymph node, so it actually saves them time then from having to go around and do that part. So keeping it close to our home made it convenient, but also we felt like we were doing more.
Right, and it's in a great place for people to be able to actually other hunters in the area to be able to get to?
Yeah, it's right on Highway 33 there, right downtown Laval. So a lot of hunting property in the area and a nice little thoroughfare between a couple counties. So we had, I don't know how many different counties dropped off at our kiosk.
It was 5 or 6 different counties
Yeah.
were represented in people dropping deer heads off here. You really need to make it easier for people in order to get them to do it. And,
Right.
You know, if you don't put something in some people's way, they're not going to do it. And we've just found that the more we can do to facilitate that,
Everything's
the better.
going that way. I mean, you can, Amazon, you can shop, everything's delivered to your door. You can order groceries ahead of time and have them dropped off at your car when you just pull up. So convenience is definitely a factor. I think that's kind of the way our kind of culture overall is shifting
sure.
too. So making it more available, more convenient, I think would help facilitate higher participation in getting numbers tested.
Yeah. How involved was this for you? How much of your time did it take? What all was included in volunteering with this?
The kiosk by far was more time involvement because we're essentially replacing that role that the DNR staff have to do by checking the kiosk, transferring the heads and collecting the data sheets and calling up the hunters that didn't fill in the forms appropriately to double check the information. So the kiosk portion was more time dependent, but the setup was really simple and straightforward. The dumpster was the opposite. A little bit more invested up front with the cost of ordering the dumpster and knowing to have to pay for it. But having it placed out there and then just checking, once, twice a week just to see if there wasn't anything else other than deer carcasses in the dumpster. That kind of basically ran itself.
Did you guys stand out at the kiosk at all and staff it, if you will, or was it more just the hands off?
It was more hands off. During the gun deer season, I went down there because I knew there would be a high volume, and I wanted to make sure that we had the data sheets in stock. And so when I went down there at that time, I did interact with a lot of hunters. It was kind of a steady stream, which was nice. I really liked that part. And then you can show them exactly how to get the forms filled out properly and help them understand what the purpose of all the information is. So that was actually enjoyable, and I actually plan on spending a little more time down there this year during the gun deer season.
You've talked about, like I said, the why behind why you did it. You guys have been really great at helping us get the word out about this. I mean, you were obviously welcoming enough to have me come into your home today. Why are you so passionate about telling people about this program and getting them to also be a part of it?
It's really enjoyable to have conversations with people and kind of open up some avenues for others to step into a conservation role. So a big part of it for me is being able to educate others. That's basically what I do for my job most of the day in clinic. So I found that really enjoyable when we would call the hunters, because that first thing I do is congratulate them and tell them how excited I was, and then ask them the information they needed, but then also ask them if they had any questions about chronic wasting disease. So, so for me, being able to communicate the information about how serious chronic wasting disease is and why it's important to get your deer tested, that's been kind of the avenue that I've really enjoyed. And I found a group, the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, that were spreading that same message. And so I became a member 2 years ago and then became a board member a year ago. So kind of stepping up into these roles where we just need voices. We need people talking about it, saying the right information in a positive way and not in a futile way. You'll hear that a lot. There's nothing you can do. Chronic wasting disease has been. There's a lot of misconceptions and myths out there that are perpetuated every day. To those that do want to listen, that ask questions, they're very open-minded and they're very eager to learn and to do more. So I feel like there's a cultural shift happening, and it's very exciting. So I think I get fueled by people's interest and wanting to do more. So I feel like I need to say more.
Yeah.
Spread that message.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I've been hunting throughout the process since CWD showed up here in Wisconsin. So, I remember the talk back then, people were real serious about it. They didn't understand what it was, but they knew that it sounded bad. And more recently, it seems like, especially in our area here where the prevalence is growing, it had seemed as though it kind of got swept under the rug, or for some people. A lot of people that have been hunting a long time just took a different approach and are looking at it differently.
I think they see deer, they see deer out in the landscape. No one's so far has contracted any kind of progressive neurological brain disease from eating CWD infected meat, so there didn't seem to be an urgency to it.
Why worry?
Right.
Yeah. This was supposed to be a terrible thing back when it started, and I still see so many deer around that it can't be as bad as it was made out to be in the beginning. And we've had that conversation many times and started having it at our outdoor club. And that's where we really realized that you can make a difference in educating people. When I first started talking about it at our board meetings, and I wasn't a board member, I just started showing up and talking to these guys, and they're the typical age hunter, 60 years old, the upper age class of hunters, if you will.
The seasoned age class.
The seasoned hunters. When I started talking about it, they really looked at me like I was just a fool. We don't have to. But there were a few that would ask questions, and over time, they're really interested. And by the end of the gun season last year, they were talking about people that they knew that weren't testing their deer, and they were kind of talking down about them. And 6 months earlier, they hadn't even considered testing deer.
Right.
So,
all the cool kids are doing it.
Yeah. So it was a really, really an interesting shift that I didn't necessarily expect, but.
Yeah, and chronic wasting disease, this is a pathogen that is not like anything anyone really has ever encountered in their lifetime. We're so used to bacteria and viruses causing disease. This prion that can't be destroyed by any means that's practical in the landscape. It has a very high infectivity rate in the wild deer herd. It's spread by multiple means, human assisted and deer, deer movement and just deer behavior. And so it's extremely complex. So I don't blame hunters and the public for not being so concerned about it, because the science has been changing so much since it first came out as well.
It's confusing.
Very confusing, because there's no treatment as far as we know. It's not something that we can actually eradicate from the environment at this point. All we can really do is, like our good friend Doug Duran says, is buy time for science. So, and that's all our mission is right now. What?
Buy time, pay for science.
Buy time, pay for science. There you go. So, and that's that's the great message, because in our area, we have it. We have it at high prevalence. There's really not a whole lot we can do other than slow it down from spreading. And any surrounding county, any other county in the state, should be on board with as many efforts as we can do to stop the spread in our area, because this is where it'll jump out to other areas as well.
So obviously getting more dumpsters and more kiosks in the areas that have a very high prevalence is important. But what would your argument be for maybe someone in a county that hasn't had any CWD in the wild? Why should someone there get involved?
I'll quote Doug again: if you don't have it, you don't want it. And that's quite simply, this is a disease that we don't have a treatment for. Any county that has hunters that want to have a dumpster should be able to have a dumpster, because this is like the basics 101 of stopping the spread, is keep it where it's at.
I think in the last year, there's been a really positive push by counties that don't have CWD, and maybe counties that just have had one or two positives. Or close by. And we're seeing CWD task force pop up in different counties, and they're putting together a plan for if CWD shows up, how to prevent it from showing up, first of all. And if it does show up, this is what our plan is. It's a fight worth fighting, and it's something that's really important for a lot of different groups, not just hunting groups, but local economies. If these hunting areas get inundated with CWD and people stop going to that area to hunt, that has an impact on the economy in that area too.
For sure.
And property values. I mean, this is deer hunting in Wisconsin, I've come to learn, is a huge economic driver. Billions of dollars we're talking about in small towns. And I think that people don't appreciate how hunter dollars, when you buy a license to hunt deer, a portion of that goes into a larger pot for other conservation projects that happen throughout the state. It could be restoring a dock for bird watchers. It could be, or a boardwalk for bird watchers. It could be restoring a dock at a lake. It's just the amount of dollars that go in to the pool to help other conservation projects that comes from deer hunting is astounding. And so we're facing a disease that could potentially, and is actually starting to show deer herd declines in certain
in western areas. The research has shown in Wyoming, Colorado, a couple different studies have shown that there is a population level impact due to CWD in that area.
When it gets to a high enough prevalence. So we're reaching those prevalence numbers in Wisconsin, and I think that's what raised the big alarm bells for us, was that this is something that could potentially stop the deer from being able to be hunted in a matter of a decade or so, when our daughter might want to start hunting. So the real issue is that this is a long-term issue. This is a marathon, not a sprint, and that we need to think about the health of the deer in the next 20, 30 years. And keeping that focus, that will help drive some of the efforts that are happening now that would potentially make a positive impact in the future.
Anything else about the Adopt a Kiosk or Adopt a Dumpster program that you think we should know?
I would say that, we've talked about the Adopt a Dumpster a little bit, but not only is it a way to try to keep CWD from spreading to different counties or spreading in your own county, it's a way to keep deer carcasses off the landscape. Everybody who shoots deer has to get rid of that deer somewhere, and too often it's a case we see deer carcasses in ditches or on public lands or in stuck in culverts because they wash down the ditch to plug up a culvert. It's really important to just keep those carcasses off the landscape for the image of hunters.
Yeah, the Adopt a Kiosk and Adopt a Dumpster, we did both this year. I don't think we had originally planned on doing both, but the program kind of developed, and so we definitely wanted to jump on board. I think that as far as a big picture, it can seem daunting or time-consuming, but, we both have full-time jobs and found some time after work to volunteer some hours. And so it's going to take more than just hunters wanting to participate, but there's several levels to participate. There's the entry level, which is just checking the kiosk if there's samples there to be tested, and then notifying the DNR. And then like what we did, the intermediate level, which was a little bit more involved with the data and transporting the heads to get sampled. And then the advanced level, which is maybe what we'll do this year, which is where we'll actually learn how to sample the lymph nodes, so that we just have to
extract
them. Yeah. So that's just what's comfortable for us. That's kind of where we see that we're going. But anyone who's willing to volunteer with, if you don't have to adopt a kiosk yourself, at least get a group together and then share that responsibility. Someone check a different day of the week, the kiosk, or for the dumpster itself. But it's going to take more than just hunters. We need conservation groups. We need people that don't hunt to care. And when we all come together, I think that we'll be able to actually make an impact at slowing this down so that it's not going to spread and become a very big problem for the wild deer herd in the state.
In my mind, I'd rather look back and find out that we did more than we really needed to than look back and find out that we did less than we should have. And that, to me, is the bottom line.
Yeah.
Spend a little more time now and do as much as we can, and we won't regret doing a little more than we needed to.
Yeah.
I agree. You know, this is a disease that affects, our wild deer herd, and it's not impossible to stop it from spreading, to slow it down. We just have to take action now if we want to see any effect down the line. And I agree, I'd rather be proven wrong in 10, 20 years that this was not going to jump into, a human disease. I hope for that, I pray for that. But until that is a 0% chance, I think we'll do everything we can because we care about the resource and we care about ensuring it for the future, for future generations. So that's the bottom line, and we're going to fight that fight.
Let's thank our guests, Mandy Camps and the Bakers, for joining in on this important discussion. If you'd like to know more, or if you'd like to participate in our adoption programs, email us, dnrpodcast@wisconsin.gov. We'll be taking a short break with the Labor Day holiday. We'll be back with new episodes every other Wednesday starting September 11th. Thanks for listening.